lovimo najboljše trenutke, da se slišimo, pa da se bo vse videlo in tudi zabeležilo na video. Ker smo pač želeli, da bi bil tudi video dostopen potem še ostalim, oziroma tudi vam, če bi želeli ponovno pogledati. Lepo pozdravljeni in dobrodošli na Kmetijskem inštitutu Slovenije. Veseli smo, da v organizaciji Kmetijskega inštituta Slovenije in Slovenskega akademskega čebelarskega društva organiziramo skupaj s Strokovnim združenjem profesionalnih čebelarjev ta 2 dneva. Prvi dan Pislakov dan je že minil, tako da danes ponedeljek ponovno z novimi temami in z ameriškim čebelarjem in priznanim biologom Randyjem Oliverjem preživimo še teh nekaj ur. Zdaj, napovedati moram, da pač žal nimamo prevajalcev v smislu tako, da bi imeli slušalke in simultano prevajali, ampak bo predavanje, kot je bilo napovedano, v angleškem jeziku. Potem pa bomo pač pomagali tudi s prevodom, kar bo nejasnega, tako da ne moramo pač vsega prevajati, upam, da razumete, če ne lahko to do jutra počnemo. Kdor pa res ima težave, da ne bo razumel, pa naj magari zdaj dvigne roko, pa se bo nekdo od naših se bo vsedel k njemu, pa mu pač malo pripovedoval oziroma prevajal. Če ima res do težave, če pa kdorkoli od vas kaj ne razume, pa se zmenimo, dogovorimo se, da dvignete roko, pa bo potem vmes nekdo od naših, ki bo določeno temo priskočil na pomoč s prevodom, pač povzel oziroma ponovil slovenščini. A bo v redu tako? Ja?
Ava, could you translate that to English for me, please?
So Randy, welcome in Slovenia, welcome at Agriculture Institute, and we are so eager to hear your new topics, and I believe that the audience is also very happy to see you, to hear you, and to ask questions later on. And so please start with your first topic about climate changes and beekeeping.
Okay. Yeah, it's not just about climate change. So, as you can see, beekeeping practices have evolved quite a bit over the ages. Aequus mellifera, the species, is also quite adaptable, and as the climate has changed over the years from the Ice Age, 40,000 years ago, it's also speciated and adapted. Beekeepers also are adaptable, and we'll see. So, let me go up next one here. So, a book that's recommended and is used by in business in the United States is this book right here. I can't recommend this book enough for everybody. It's a very short book. I don't know if it's translated to Slovenian. It takes like an hour to read the book, but it's all about adapting to change in business. And it has a few take-home points. So the first thing to do is to anticipate change. Look into the future so you can anticipate what is going to be changing. The second thing then is to monitor the change as it's happening. And then as you monitor the change and you see that change is imminent, you need to adapt very quickly to those changes. This applies very much to beekeepers. In my career in beekeeping over the last, 50-some years and the last 35 years, doing it as a living, we have changed our management practices tremendously over that time. When I started, we were pollinating the almond trees for about $10. We're getting $225 for the same exact rent going to the same location nowadays. That's a huge change in our industry. We didn't have varroa, we didn't have tracheomite, we didn't have Nosema ceranae when I started beekeeping. All those are major changes. The point is that anything is going to stay alive, either in nature or in business, you need to adapt to change or go extinct. We call it going out of business if you are in business. And what's happening right now is the Earth is changing. It's been changing for the last 40,000 years, since the last ice age. And now it's changing at an accelerated rate, just like everything else in our society is changing at a very accelerated rate. A number of you, along with me, were born before we had the internet, before we had cell phones, before we were using plastics, okay? Huge changes in everything. And so with this climate change, we're getting both increasing temperatures and increasing carbon dioxide, and they have separate effects. So here's a graph right here. This is for California average temperature for the winter, or for the summer right here. And I asked my sons, am I just getting old, or is it getting hotter during the summer here? So this is from NOAA data from these are out of focus, 1895 to present. This is my lifespan right here, and this indicates, yes, it's not just me getting older. It has a trend of getting hotter. So beekeeping is very different now. Down in California, in the Imperial Valley, down to the south, where it's getting the hottest, you cannot keep colonies alive without putting shade over them. You need to put shade over them during the summer, or the colonies will simply die. Within a few years, these beekeepers may have to start importing Apis mellifera emetica from Arabia to take the place of Apis mellifera ligusticus, because it'll be too hot for Apis mellifera ligustica to survive. That is possible. So now I'm anticipating the change, and if they were smart, they would be making connections right now to be able to import Apis mellifera emetica to take their place. So you need to start preparing for shorter and warmer winters. So we have in the US plant hardiness zones that you can look at to see what plants will survive in your climate based upon the winter temperature. And it's changed from 1990 to 2012. They need to adapt this because the plants are changing. They can no longer live in the same climate. So we beekeepers also need to adapt to changing floral types. And we see different species of plants evolve, species that we used to, or our fathers could count on for a nectar flow in a certain area. Those plants may not even exist there anymore. It's different plants now, so we have to adapt to those changes. The other thing is, as far as there's no normal now. It's a new normal, and it's changing. When my sons say, Dad, so what can we expect? And I say, I'm sorry, boys, there's no more normal anymore. I don't really know what we can expect. And one of the reasons for that is the climate change is changing the flow of the jet stream. It used to be more circular now, and now it makes these great big oscillations. So now when a high pressure zone moves over you, instead of it passing in a couple of days, it may sit there for weeks. So you get very, very intense heat, or if it's a rain or a snow, you get very, very intense rain. So in California now, and I hear here, you're getting these really intense hot droughts, more so than previously, and now we get these massive rainstorms coming in. So we're in California, we're going from flooding to incredible drought. Very, very stressful for the agriculture and for the bees. So this normal movement from across the continent, now these pressure zones just linger in one space. They get stuck like this, and so we'll have wildfires right here, and you'll have huge raining and flooding down there, much more so than we used to have. So prepare for more flooding. This is California's Central Valley a few years ago. Okay, California's whole Central Valley was an inland sea, and from time to time it turns back to an inland sea. We're going to get a rain coming up soon where most of California will be underwater, and we are not prepared for that at all. Okay, some of us have moved up into the mountains, but all my family and neighbors that are down in the flatland, they will be underwater one of these years. Almond pollination. Here's my hives in almond pollination. So we have to place our hives carefully, because now places where it used to be dry, you have to get above here. And then drought severities. So let's take a look here. So here's a map from 2000 to 2009. This is from 2030 to 2039, expected drought intensity. Okay, so extreme drought is red going into pink. So you guys right up here, you got some red, you're going to be in the pink zone. You think you've got drought right now, you have no idea how bad it's going to get. So you better start preparing for water sources for your bees and supplemental feeding. Your summer dearths, where there's no pollen or nectar coming in, are going to get longer and more intense. And this is affecting all of agriculture, every aspect. In California, for example, the Central Valley, which produces the tomatoes for candy tomatoes, for ketchup and all that for the United States, they're figuring in 10 years we will not be able to grow tomatoes there anymore. The almond orchards are going to have to start moving out of California to cooler areas. So we're now planting agave to make tequila, a cactus, in California now to take the place of where we were growing other crops. So those are going to be big changes again. The other thing is as it warms, tropical pests will start moving up into areas. So in California, where the bollworm, cotton pest, was only a pest, it's only a pest here right now, it's going to be a pest throughout the whole state as it warms. And we're seeing this with like the bark beetles on the pine trees and the fir trees are moving further and further north. So places where we never had the forest killed by bark beetles are now getting killed. Now we get the massive fires going through these forests up in Canada where they never dreamed they would have wildfires or bark beetles up there. And then I used the World Health Organization data where they tell how many pounds of pesticides in total are applied per hectare. And I graphed it all out, and then for each country, I took the latitude of that country, and I created this graph right here. So this is latitude, going from the poles, let's say the North Pole, towards the equator, and this is your pesticide use per country by latitude. You notice a trend in that? The closer, the warmer you get, the more pesticides are necessary to be sprayed. So if you think pesticides are an issue right now, you just wait. Okay? Also, the warmer winters. Now here's the graph from NOAA here. This is our wintertime, January through December. And yes, over my lifetime, winters are getting much warmer. Now that has an implication for beekeepers because that means it gives Varroa a head start. A few years ago, one of the major commercial queen producers and large almond pollinators said, Randy, it's going to be a disaster next year for almond pollination. There won't be enough bees. And I said, how do you know that, a year in advance? He said, we just had the warmest winter in the United States historically ever. That means across the United States, beekeepers are not going to be prepared because Varroa just got a 1-month head start on them. And their management strategies for the mite will not work this year, and all their bees are going to die from Varroa because they're going to use the same management strategy that they used for the last 10 years, and it's not going to work. And he predicted it on the nose. A year later, we had a massive loss of bees from inadequate Varroa management. So again, monitor the changes, pay attention, and be ready to adapt. You may have to change your Varroa management strategy if you have an exceptionally warm winter. Okay, so this shows here, what you have is this, when a colony has brood, so here's 7 months with brood, your Varroa population will build up, and then once they go broodless, it reduces like this. So what happens is, if you go from 7 months with brood to 8 months with brood, it makes a big change, especially on that 8th month, because the further out here you go, the more steep this curve gets. So you don't notice it in the springtime, but you're going to notice it towards later in the season when it catches up with you. Okay, the other thing is the honeybees evolved here in Europe along with the native plants. So you have this, the phenology is the timing of the plant bloom. So the bees have evolved to be in sync with that phenology, especially the native pollinators, even more so than the honeybees. And we're getting out of sync now. So now, when you have like a ground nesting bee that emerges at a certain temperature, and the plants are blooming based upon photoperiod, day length, now they get out of sync, and that native bee that depends upon emerging from the ground at exactly the time that the plants start blooming, because it's the only species of plant that it gathers pollen from, will be out of sync, and that species, or both species, may go extinct because the plant won't get pollinated and the bees won't have food from that plant. So that's a change. What I find now is in some of our yards that we have used for 30 years that we can put nucleus colonies out into and count on having a natural nectar flow and pollen flow for them to build up. There's a breaks and we come back, oh my God, these colonies starve right in springtime when we usually don't have to worry about feeding them at all. So we're having to change our management. We're having to feed nucleus colonies in yards that we've used 30 years that we never had to feed in before. Now, everybody hears about CO2 going up. You think it only affects temperature. It affects more than just temperature. It affects ocean acidification, but it also affects the nutritional value of the pollen of plants. So this is an invisible change, but this is hugely important to especially these solitary bees that gather the same size ball of pollen that they've gathered for the last thousands of years and feed it to their larvae, and it no longer contains the same nutritional values. That's going to change their survival. So over my lifespan, from here up to there, as the CO2 goes up, the percent protein in the pollen goes down. There's a third less protein in that pollen. All of our foods are going down. All the livestock industry knows this, that the hay that they feed to the livestock is less nutritious. When plants have more carbon dioxide, they grow faster, but they only grow carbohydrates. They grow starch and they grow sugar and cellulose, but they do not increase the protein level or the trace mineral level. So the food has more energy, but it's less nutritious. So what's happening now is the bees have to work half again as hard as they used to 40 years ago or 50 years ago. Half again as hard. They have to gather half again as much pollen to raise the same larva. They have to fly half again as many flight hours to raise the same larva. For the old-time beekeepers in here, yes, the bees have to work half again harder than they did when you started beekeeping when you were younger. So it's tougher for them to stay alive. So what we have done is we've started adopting to instead of relying on natural pollen, we are feeding large quantities of artificial diet, of vegetable protein patties. And all I can say to the young generation here is, man, I'm with Greg. We are leaving a shit pile for our children to have to deal with. And that's when my generation, the 60s generation, thought, oh yeah, we're gonna fix the environment and everything. No, we didn't. We just continued to screw it up. So I feel really bad about that, about leaving our children and grandchildren to clean up our mess. Okay, humans are also changing the floral landscapes. We are transporting species across geographical barriers, across oceans and mountains that they never would naturally cross. We have all these different kinds of invasive plants. Now the odd thing is, when you take the European honeybee to the Americas where it's not native, it doesn't adapt that well to some of the native plants. But then we also import European plants which become weeds to us, and the honeybees love them. So many of our most best bee forage plants in the United States are plants from Europe that the honeybees were adapted to, which we consider invasive weeds there. In return, we gave you one back also. Okay, so Rubinia, it's a Native American plant, which the bees do well over in the U.S., but I noticed that some of you guys, your bees also like Rubinia flowers too. Okay, the human population. Notice the growth curve? You notice kind of like a sudden change right here? We humans are just exploding on this planet right now. Okay, so you can go to the world population counter, and this ticks every second and tells you how many new births there are per second. It is just scary to watch, okay? There's 200,000 additional people per day net, after you subtract the deaths, every day there's an additional 200,000 people on this planet right now, and will be for a number of years coming up. And this is the honeybee's main environmental competitor, right here. We have 7 billion human mouths to feed and clothe, 200,000 new mouths every single day. On average, worldwide, it takes about 2 acres, about a hectare, to feed and clothe one additional human being. That means you need 400,000 new hectares of production every single day. So there's not enough environment to do that. So what we need, and not only that, but the first world company demands cheap, cosmetically perfect food. That means lots of pesticides, because they don't want to buy any food with a bug in it. And this classic pogo cartoon, yes, we have met the enemy, and he is us. We are our worst enemy right now. I see you enjoying this. The foreseeable future, they plan on the human population starting to slow down and probably peak around here. My guess is we can expect to see a lot of starvation in the next few years. Unfortunately, that looks like unavoidable. Not so much in this country, but there will be countries where starvation will probably be occurring on a large scale, human starvation. So, let me see if I have this. Oh, I left a slide out. Darn. Okay, so I must have it here. Oh, man. Okay, I left that. We only have 3 choices to deal with this. Okay, none of them attractive. One choice is we reduce the human population substantially and immediately. That's politically very unpopular, okay? So we can probably forget that unless Putin really gets pissed off, and maybe the human population might get reduced substantially, but we can't count on Putin to do that. Second choice is we tear up a whole bunch of natural habitat and to create more farmland and drive a whole lot of species to extinction immediately. Also unattractive, so there's only one choice remaining. And that is to farm existing agricultural land more efficiently and intensively. So get ready, guys. We are going to start farming farmland more and more intensively across the planet. That is, we know this is going to happen. And yeah, so the farmland is peaking while the production of what we need increases. So we're going to have to deal with increased agricultural efficiency. And there are environmental effects of increased agricultural intensification. So number 1, environmental cost, destruction of habitat. People think it's pesticides. People think it's, certain crops. This is the most environmentally destructive practice you possibly have, whether you're organic or not. When you take a plow across land, you destroy every single species on that land and the habitat for all the species permanently. And you replace it with a monoculture of one single crop, whatever it is. So it's not about organic farming, it's not about anything else. The plow is the most destructive thing you can do to the planet right here. And then you replace it with monocultures like this, okay? So there's no competition for those species. This is not good pollinator habitat. So now with the Roundup Ready, we have this fence post monoculture. We used to have the fence rows where all the weeds grew, where wildlife could live and where the bees could forage. Now with the large tractors, as we grow the farm size, especially in the United States, they don't have those fence rows. I see a lot more out here, but not a whole lot here, even in Slovenia, of the fence rows where all the bees used to be. We're doing clean farming. So even with organic agriculture, they're saying, oh my gosh, if you have weeds growing along here, well, then birds are in there, and then they'll come over and they'll poop on the crop, and then we get complaints about bacterial food poisoning. So you better eliminate any place where wildlife can live, even on an organic farm. So in California, the organic farms are actually less environmentally friendly than the non-organic farms because of that. It's just totally backwards. And then, of course, there's heavy use of herbicides and other pesticides. Now, you look what replaces that natural habitat. So this is for the U.S. Corn, entirely unfavorable to pollinators. Soybeans, largely, most cultivars unfavorable. A few for a short period of time will provide some nectar, but almost no pollen. Wheat, unfavorable to pollinators. Hay, now that they're cutting the lucerne early for dairy hay before it blooms much, unfavorable for pollinators. So now, right here, we have all this agricultural land not favorable for pollinators. We only have a very small amount of land that is favorable for pollinators by our choice of crops. So I call them agro-deserts. They're green, they're beautiful, but there ain't nothing there for the bees to, or other pollinators or wildlife to feed on. So we have this loss, oh, there's my three choices right there. We have lots of species do this habitat conversion. You can see this loss of species over time from 1970 to 2000, and this is going to be going downhill fast. This is the next great extinction on this planet. Now, honeybees are not going to go extinct, but the other pollinators, many of them will be going extinct. And in the United States, we have conservation reserve program lands where the government paid the farmers not to till those lands to provide wildlife habitat, but we haven't kept up with the incentives, and now we're losing those conservation reserve lands. Here in Slovenia, boy, this is where your money should be going, to pay the farmers to provide pollinator and wildlife friendly lands and get paid for it. Rather than helping the beekeepers directly with money, pay the farmers to make their land more friendly to the pollinators. So again, this high efficiency farmer, no forage for the pollinators. Oh, I didn't, okay. So now in many areas, we are doing supplemental feeding, high intensity pollinator management, and this is just a breeding ground for pathogens and transmission of problems. And we're being forced to adopt this concentrated animal feedlot operation model for our honeybees. So we're starting to see this where we're moving our pollinators on demand around, but we're having to manage them intensively. Okay, that's the bad news. So let's look at signs of improvement. Okay, so this is what we're seeing in California. Planting hedgerows for the benefit of pollinators and birds and other wildlife. This is getting very popular. We're managing our rice fields for the migratory waterfowl. So this is farmers don't want to destroy habitats. Farmers love nature, okay? So if you incentivize the farmers to reward them, and this is what the farmer said, he says, don't penalize us, we can grow anything. Reward us for growing what you want us to grow. So instead of penalizing the landowners, reward them for being more environmentally friendly. Operation Pollinator by Syngenta. The pesticide companies, of course this is greenwashing, we know that, but they actually are helping to with pollinator habitat suggestions. This is John Lunger right here. He's a USDA entomologist, researcher, and he got fed up with the way the government's handling it, and he quit. And he decided he's going to start a demonstration farm of how to do sustainable regenerative farming friendly to wildlife and friendly to pollinators. He's a beekeeper also. So I know him, and he's going to walk, not just talk the talk, he's going to walk the walk and demonstrate to other farmers that you can profitably farm while being environmentally friendly and regenerative. I send him $1,000 every year. I just send him this check this week. I said, John, keep it up. You know, you want any help with the bees? Let me know. But this is where I am putting my money. Is somebody who's not just complaining with fundraising like many environmental groups. Here's a guy who's actually getting a crew there. He's got a whole bunch of students and PhDs working with him, and they're starting the 1,000 farm initiative. They're getting 1,000 other farmers to start to do this and to show demonstration that they can make a living, make a profit doing regenerative, eco-friendly farming. This is the kind of initiative that I like to see. And to go get away from this whole organic certification. Organic is simply a marketing term. It has nothing to do with eco-friendliness. What we really want is practice agroecology and regenerative. My suggestion to everybody is stop being anti-this and anti-that and be pro-environment. Get the pro message out, not the anti-message out. So we do have some big problems. Parasites for bees, lack of forage, and pesticides. So let's talk about the parasites. Our favorite parasite right here, this catastrophe of varroa, where for the first time it has a vector that just shoots viruses directly into its hemolymph. Very, very tough for the bees, like mainlining viruses right here. And deforming virus very rapidly evolved to take advantage of this new vector. Stephen Martin in Hawaii showed how, as the number of years, so this is how many years on an island they had varroa from 0, so these have no varroa. The diversity of strains of deforming virus before varroa, it was already there, and a great diversity of lots of variants of deforming virus. But once you, and this is the prevalence of deforming virus in the islands, in the colonies prior to varroa. Once varroa arrives, you start to lose these variants until after 3 years you have one variant in every colony has it. This is evolution before our eyes within 3 years of the viruses, okay? And now we have this monster that is, will kill our colonies and distribute the virus. Oh, I thought I took these out, okay. Okay, and now we have Nosema ceranae. Okay, it's a little bit longer and skinnier than the Nosema apis. And this is, was a big problem during the invasive wave and was connected with a lot of colony deaths. After about 5 years, the bees adapted to it. The only bees left alive were those that were adapted. I remember one beekeeper saying, are any of the queen producers breeding for CCD-resistant colonies? I said, well, as far as I know, there's no queen producer breeding off of dead colonies, so I guess the answer is yes. That's just nature taking its course. And what we had is, with Nosema ceranae, I went to the USDA disease lab, and I asked the technician there, can you tell me your records, historical records? Every sample of bees that come into the disease lab, first they take 10 bees, they squash them, and they see whether Nosema is present or not. And you can see from 1984 up to 2001, it was very rare to detect any Nosema or not. Right here, Nosema ceranae. We hadn't even identified it yet, but obviously this is when it invaded, and the first CCD case was right here. We started noticing CCD right around here. It became in the news right about here. And then the bees evolved resistance to Nosema ceranae, and it's stabilized out. So very strong correlation between the invasive wave of Nosema ceranae and colony collapse in North America. And this is a typical sign of colony collapse due to Nosema ceranae. And if I pick these bees off, 10 bees, 8 out of 10 highly infected with Nosema ceranae. A colony can handle 2 or 3 out of 10 infected, but once you get past 6 out of 10, you start seeing adverse effects. By the time you get to 8 out of 10, that colony is toast, and it dies with this symptom where you can see by the pollen band right here, bee red, that was solid brood a few days before. So it's a very rapid collapse down to this small number of bees and the queen. We don't see this sign hardly anymore now that the invasive wave of Nosema ceranae is over. Okay, pesticides. So this is the biologically productive lands in the United States. So the more brown it is, the more biologically productive. This is a use of chlorpyrifos, the organophosphate. Exactly matches wherever you have environmentally high carbon soils, you have a high rate of application of these insecticides. And it's not the neonics, it's chlorpyrifos, which was the most common insecticide found in bee-collected pollen. The other thing is, the beekeepers used to keep clean combs. We are now the #1 pesticide applicator to beehives, beekeepers themselves. We've contaminated beeswax across the face of the world, okay? And that's us doing that. So some of us haven't applied synthetic miticides in many, many years, so we actually have clean combs, but most of our combs in the United States are contaminated. Okay, agricultural pesticides right here. Here's the problem in California and probably in Slovenia. Each of these are the different types of crops. So this would be California Central Valley. Every different color is a different crop type with different pesticide applications there. And we do see these pesticide kills, not from the land that you have your bees on, but from a neighbor's land where the bees are going over there. So the farmer whose land you have the bees on protects your bees, but his neighbor is spraying something in bloom and you get bee killed. So we're essentially playing pesticide roulette all the time if you're in an agriculture area with the fungicides, the surfactants, the neonics, the synergies of them working together against the bees. Now, remember that graph I showed you of the pesticide use relative to latitude? Here is the list right here. I don't think Slovenia is on here. So the Europeans, like the French, who are just screaming bloody murder about pesticide use, they're right up here in the middle, right here. USA is actually was lower than France. And then you look at these tropical countries right here. They're just some of them I couldn't put on here. They're just off the chart entirely. So the warmer it is, the more pesticide use there will be. Oh, I put those in twice on there. Okay, so pesticides are evolving. Oh, I thought it was on top of this. Okay, and here's our beekeeper applied. So on the list of the most of pesticides, from the most prevalent pesticides found in combs in the U.S. So here's it. Okay, so here's your D-tex right here. And I took the percentiles out right here. So this is the most common, would be fluvalate. So of the top 10 most common pesticides, most of them are applied by beekeepers themselves. So what that means is that the baseline background pesticide exposure level starts with the beekeepers, and then you add on the agricultural insecticides on top of that. So you may want to consider that you don't wind up with this self-inflicted damage of these contaminated combs. After Kumafos use in the United States, there were mountains of combs burned by the beekeepers because those combs were so contaminated with Kumafos, you couldn't raise a queen bee on them. Okay, I don't know, you guys use Kumafos here? Okay, well that's what you left. I would never put Kumafos anywhere near a beehive. Now, there's a lot of pressure on the growers by the consumer, okay? And the pesticides and the growers definitely know this. And in California, we are definitely responding. California is one of the most intensely regulated states for pesticides in North America. And what it's showing is, as far as toxicity, from highly toxic to relatively non-toxic, and this is approved for organic use are the blue ones, and this is your percent of total pesticides applied. We're applying much more environmentally friendly pesticides than we used to. So there are clear signs of improvement, at least in California. This is a neat one. This is from the state of Mississippi. On aerial spray rigs, you have to have a transmitter on the spray valve. When you open the spray valve to release a pesticide aerial spraying, it shows up on this map, and it goes to the regulatory agency, and they make sure that the pilot doesn't overspray. Every country should demand that this is off-the-shelf technology to make sure that the sprays are applied very accurately. I don't know how much, do you have much aerial spraying here? Oh, California. Okay, in the U.S., lots of aerial spraying, okay. And then I was talking at lunch saying, if you guys are interested in reading the future on pesticides, just go to online, free patents online, and type in the word Bayer or Syngenta or BASF and pesticide. And that would be their patent applications. Those patent applications give you a crystal ball of what's going to be coming out 10 years from now, what they are working on. So if you're curious about what the pesticide companies are doing, you don't have to ask. It's online. Free patents online. Just type in the name of the company and type in pesticide and look at the results, and you'll see every patent they're working on. It takes about 10 years from when they patent it till it hits the market. That's your crystal ball right there. The good news is they're hearing it loud and clear. They know the consumer is going to demand safer and safer pesticides, and that's what they indeed are working on. Next thing is this over-dependence on herbicides. So Roundup, glyphosate, was a wonderful, relatively environmentally safe herbicide. They say it's a once-in-a-lifetime discovery of an herbicide that has such low environmental impact. Unfortunately, the farmers just kept spraying it over and over and over again. Now they're in a selective breeding program for resistant weeds, and now they've ruined it. So the problem isn't so much the herbicide, which have environmental benefits. Allows no-till farming, increase the carbon in the soil, and in the third world countries, now instead of having all your kids go out and spraying, hand spraying pesticides and poisoning your kids and brain damage, they can kill the weeds with herbicides. So they have their place, but not to be used to the extent that they are using them. We do have, for the future now you notice in California, Israel, and some other countries, all farm labor is being replaced by robots. Okay, so if your kids are looking for a job of farm labor, say no, that's not where to go. There's not going to be humans out working on farms. It's going to be all roboticized. Now that has a benefit because they can make these solar-powered weeders that are GPS controlled, computer controlled, that identify individual weeds and then target them and hit them with a laser or hit them with a little spot spray of a herbicide. So much better weed control. Now, that's good for the environment because they're not spraying chemicals, but bad for the honeybees because there's nothing else. Those weeds are what the honeybees feed upon. Oh, got that one already? Okay, so these monocultures create a market for pollinators on demand. Here's one of our trucks out here. We're pollinating almond trees coming into bloom right there. And it creates a niche for the large-scale beekeepers who have these staging yards where they put down 5,000 colonies side by side waiting to move into almond pollination. This is very common in California. Or like ours, we have a small operation. So this is our niche in there too. That's almond pollination. This is California Central Valley right now, today. That's what it looks like. This massive plantings of a single species of tree all coming into bloom at the same time. What's changed is, in 2004, I wrote to the editors of the two bee magazines. I said, "You guys realize there was a watershed event this year?" They go, "What do you mean?" I said, "This year, for the first time, the income to the beekeeping industry in the United States for pollinating a single crop exceeded the income for all honeybees." So in the United States, since then we've got about half and half. About half of beekeepers' income comes from pollination services and half for honey production. So we changed from a honey producing industry to a pollination industry. That's a big, big change. So right now, 180 pollination contract, which is the kind of the going rate right now, that's equivalent to making a 90-pound, 40-kilogram honey crop from pollinating. And you get this for maybe 2 weeks of pollination service. And you don't have to do any extracting or bottling or anything. Okay, back to the feedlot. So this is a very good fit to the natural niche. This is not a good fit to the natural niche of the honeybee. Now, about a third of all the colonies in the U.S. are moved to 2 states in the Midwest. for the summer, North and South Dakota, okay, which used to be wonderful habitat until now it's starting to look like Slovenia. Those are all registered, those are registered beekeeping locations, only the registered ones right there. It's hard to find a place to put bees where there isn't somebody already with bees there in those states. So of course their honey production, just like you guys, is going down. Okay. Parasites. 1960 to 2020, chalk root came in, tracheal mite, varroa, deformed wing virus, small hive beetle, Nosema ceranae, and wow, all of a sudden pollination prices raised up. I wonder why. People say, oh, it's pesticides, it's this, that. No, that's a lot of new pathogens and parasites to come into a species in a short period of time. And the shit hit the fan the winter of 2004, 2005, and we came up way short to pollinate the almonds. And that's when the pollination prices went up and started paying for the beekeepers to start managing their parasites. Okay. Now, we're not done. Okay, so this is for the end. You guys, have you got Vespa here yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Oh,
Not yet.
You got something to look forward to. It's nasty. Oh, God, I don't know if you've been over to France or somewhere, but it is no fun for the beekeepers. We got varroa, but we got Tropilaps out there knocking on the door wanting to get here. And then Apis florea over has invaded the Mideast now and is competing against Apis mellifera. These little small colonies in the trees can outcompete Apis mellifera. There's Apis dorsata, the giant honeybee, just for scale. And then varroa. Okay, oh, okay. Okay, so nobody can predict the future, but I got a pretty good guess. We're going to continue to see the viruses evolving. I just talked to, no, not Yvonne, the other guy earlier before Yvonne, the virologist. Was he Yvonne too? Anyway, okay. Okay. And talking about that, he's seeing the evolution of the viruses here in Slovenia. That's going to keep happening. We can predict that the miticides are going to fail. Amitraz is on its way out, and you're going to struggle to adapt. That's what back to who moved my cheese. That's my monitoring of the situation right here. What we're seeing is yesterday's treatment thresholds. When you said, oh yeah, you got your mites get up to this level and then treat, that doesn't apply anymore. We keep our mite counts down close to 0 all year long to keep our bees healthy. So here's for the US right here. This is the measured by the tech teams each year after year here. So these are the October mite counts year after year, with this being the safe level right here to go into winter. So there's no question why US beekeepers are having these high mortality rates in the winter. They're just not controlling their mites. This is really obvious right here. Probably for you guys too. But beekeepers are learning to use methods. So here's me doing early generation mite washes right here. And we also are evolving in our miticides right here. And Suvalnic was good up to about this point. You may be able to use it again. Kumafos had a heyday and then stopped working. Amitraz is starting to fade off here. And we're seeing resistance to Amitraz happening around the world. So I prepared this a few years ago. We're actually seeing it happen. This says, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. That is our fortune cookie right here. So we need to develop better, more efficient miticides. And I feel that we can probably do it using the 3 organic products, the oxalic acid, formic acid, and Temu. And more focused on bee breeding. So domestic livestock, they're bred for productivity and intensive husbandry. And same thing with the honeybees. One of the nicknames we have for the bees that are bred specifically for rapid buildup and growth and preparation for almond pollination are mite candy. And the mice just love these bees. So, and they require husbandry and regular treatment. So I'm trying to work at breeding bees that do not need that. But this, oh yeah, so here's, who was it? One of you researchers, I'm going to show you, Yvonne. this is the mitotypes of the managed bees versus the feral bees. So this is the female bloodline. And you can see the C1 mitotype on managed bees is the predominant mitotype, but in the feral bees, it disappears. So we're breeding bees that will not survive without management. So you can see why we have the problem. But look at, so there's very few of these other bloodlines in the managed bees. But look at all the bloodlines that are still existing in North America, totally unmanaged, not restocked by the managed bees at all, by swarms. These are feral bloodlines that have survived everything. These are a huge possible reservoir of genetics for us to breed from and develop resistant stocks of bees. And you guys have them here. You don't have to create anything new to breed for mite resistance. You only have to select what's already in your population. That's what we are doing. I don't know if I have time to talk about breeding today, but we started at a level of a fraction of a percent of our 1,000, 1,500 colonies that exhibited resistance, and now we're up to like 20 to 30% after 8 years. So you don't create anything new. It's like a breeding. That takes a mutation or a hybridization, but you simply find what's already in there and start eliminating the susceptible ones. And the Achilles heel for Varroa is its rate of reproductive success. So what I'm doing like John Lundgren, I'm doing a demonstration project for the commercial queen producers and counting how many hives you need and how many hours you have to spend to do this. It's only 100 hours, total man-hour, to get into a serious selection breeding program for mite resistance. It's not that big a deal. Okay, public perception of beekeeping. People are aware of this, with all this, of what would happen without the honeybees. So this is very, very beneficial for us. The best solution is not to go out and get a beehive. That's not the problem. There's a lot of misdirected activism. I'm a life member of the Sierra Club, and I've been very critical of the Sierra Club for presenting scientifically inaccurate fear-mongering to the public. I said, guys, you know, I expect that from the pesticide companies, not from the environmental groups. This is not good. It turns my stomach to see an environmental group scaring the public for fundraising by saying things that are not true. So, and I know in Europe there's very strong anti-GMO, anti-bear. I will tell you right now, a lot of that is based upon fallacious arguments. Okay, I'm not gonna yeah, this one's ridiculous. The problem was not the neonicotinoids ones. That's not what's causing the problem. Okay, this is a great one. Okay, this is put out by the Pesticide Action Network of North America. Big, thick study, and it said the weight of evidence demonstrates that pesticides are indeed key in explaining the honeybee decline. So you see the problem with this cover? So these experts on what's causing the problem of bees didn't even notice on their cover photo that they were showing the actual problem, which was not the pesticides. I just cracked up saying, oh my God, yes, so this is really great scientific review. Oh, and you Europeans get to see this movie, okay? And every European audience I've talked to, oh, why do you move to the almonds, you know, where they get sprayed by pesticides and get killed? This is me helping the film crew of that movie. The producer of that movie stayed at my house for a month while I introduced him the year before the filming to that movie. Then they got me to help with the filming. And they said, let's stage a shot right here. They were spraying fungicides that day in this orchard. and we got a spray bottle. And said, let's pretend it's an herbicide spray so we can spray the herbicide on this bee on a flower. I go, okay, we did that. And then after I left, they replaced the water in the spray bottle with insecticide and sprayed it with an insecticide. The growers would never spray an insecticide, no way in the world. They're paying $200 a colony to rent. They're not going to spray a pesticide or an insecticide. And they put that in the movie. And all the Europeans think, oh, we get sprayed by insecticides and almonds. That's total fiction.
Yes, but this is really, we have this book in Slovene language. And I'm all the time asking this question, how is this possible? I mean,
yeah. No, Marcus threw us under the bus. Marcus wanted to make a sensationalized movie and faked the photo. That never happens in almonds. Yeah, really bothered us beekeepers a lot. Okay, unwarranted demonization, okay? Monsanto is mainly a plant breeding company. The focus, the Roundup Ready is just a side project. Mainly they're developing really good cultivars of plants to benefit the growers, to benefit the environment. Okay, so here's the UC Davis Plant Breeding Academy. Here's all the evil guys. These are the people developing genetically engineered crops for the benefit of growers and for the benefit of the environment, okay? They don't need to be demonized here. Here's the future trends for genetic engineering. This is herbicide tolerance, but all these insect resistance, product quality, agronomic properties, virus resistance, fungal resistance, bacterial resistance. Those are the traits that are being used for genetically engineered crops, but because of consumer activism, they're not being released because of pushback by the public. Okay, so it's really, we're shooting ourselves in the foot again. Yeah, so the reality check is the fear mongering is unwarranted. These are the most thoroughly tested plants on the market and will allow us to actually have a more environmentally safe production. So get off your damn bandwagons on anti-GMO. Let that go. There's huge promise in those. We're seeing a huge shift in beekeeper demographics. When I started beekeeping, it was all old men, white males over 60. That was all you ever saw at a bee meeting. And now we see all kinds of young people and lots of women involved in beekeeping. And I'd like to see the change in demographics. I'm going to skip that one. Okay, and consumer demand now for safer, cleaner honeys. And so that's good. To get these consumers, but it's going to be very difficult to compete against the inexpensive labor from China and also all the rice syrup that they've learned how to make it look like honey. That hurts the beekeepers everywhere. This selling of the funny honey. Okay, business of beekeeping. We must adapt and evolve. Okay, if I convince you there's going to be changes coming along, now it's up to you guys to look at how we're going to do this. At first, humans were plunderers of beehives. And then we learned to keep bees 3,000 years ago. Egyptians were doing queen selection 3,000 years ago. In Israel, they were importing gentle queens from another area to keep in Israel. We have not progressed from 3,000 years ago in our beekeeping practice. Pat yourself on the back, okay? Then most of the technology that we're using in most countries other than Slovenia, the Leishhoff hive was invented in the 1850s. The hive smoker was invented in the 1850s, and the mucocomb extractor were all invented in the 1850s. And I love it. I love being in an industry that we use 1850s technology every day. That's way cool. We still use that same equipment there. But it's no longer the same. This is California just after the gold rush when it was just ripe for honeybees there. And the progressive beekeepers now are learning to change their management practices. And you guys all know, this is the professional association here, right? Or is it hobbyists?
It's academic.
Academic, okay. I don't want to badmouth the hobbyists, okay? In front of them. Anyway. Okay, so for progressive beekeepers, they're learning to adapt and change things. The hobbyists are kind of lagging behind here. Okay, what did I do here? I got the wrong, I had a shorter version here. Okay, what you can do, you can write to your government agencies and say, you know, we don't need dollars for the hobby beekeepers. What we need is those dollars going to the growers, to the farmers, to manage their lands in a better manner. Voting with your dollars. We now have this marketing agent up there. This is the one who makes the decisions. The housewife. All the companies look at the housewife, how she spends her dollars. And you can pass all the government regulations you want. But if you want rapid change, you talk to the housewives. In a month, they will change an industry. If they stop buying a product, if they've got A law with apples in it, it will crash an industry in a month. The housewife. This is the most powerful person to get change right here. So target your messaging to the housewife who is buying the products. Every time you spend your dollars, support sustainable agriculture, buy locally produced fruit and vegetables, support local small farms, be active in conserving wildlife habitat. Oh man, I got the wrong slideshow here. This is what about beekeepers responding to market opportunity at the peak of bee numbers in the U.S. That was World War II, when there was a huge demand for beeswax for munitions, and the government supported the beekeeper industry. So of course you have the most number of colonies. After World War II, when the government stopped supporting beekeepers, you got out of the draft if you were a beekeeper. Okay, so you have the most number of hives then, and they went down, really got hit hard when Varroa arrived around here. Okay, I want to get to the end. Okay, future. Okay, one of the rules in business is when an industry is having big problems, that's when opportunity exists. Because there's going to be some people who are going to make a lot of money. So when other businesses are failing, somebody's going to replace them and make money. This is your chance. Okay, here is consumer price index. At this here, the price of honey faster than consumer price index. The price of a nuke much faster than consumer price index, and almond pollination rental way above that. Beekeeping is the most profitable it's ever been in my lifetime. Okay, we are reveling in beekeeping. This is the most profitable beekeeping has ever been for us. We're not complaining. Here's the words to remember. The most dangerous words in business. Because that's how we've always done it. Does that resonate in Slovenia? Because that's how we've always done it? Yeah, you guys.
It's like our father or mother teach us, and we will do the same. And we are doing the same with our hives.
I noticed. Okay? So here's my take-home message for you guys. The most dangerous words in business are because that's how we've always done it. It used to be a lot simpler keeping bees. These are my two sons, back a few years ago when they took over. I see a viable future for them. Their practices will evolve and change, and they're going to make money. They're making money right now, and they're going to keep making money because they are going to anticipate change, monitor the change, and then adapt quickly. The only constant is change itself. Questions? Even now, I was going to do a short summary in Slovenian.